Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a massive shout out to our amazing sponsor this season, Jo Higgs from Jo Higgs Creative. Jo is a freelance logo and brand designer with over a decade of experience, and she is all about helping female-led businesses stand out and attract their dream clients. Right now, Jo is offering a fantastic free downloadable guide called Building Your Brand. It dives into the basics of branding and how to really boost your brand awareness as a small business owner. Plus, there's a super helpful checklist you can go through at your own pace. You can grab it at www.joannhiggs.co.uk/free download, and I'll make sure to pop the link for that and all the ways to find out more about her in the show notes too. In the meantime though, let's get back to the episode you're here for. Today I want to talk about something that might surprise you a bit, especially coming from me, someone who teaches and loves social media for a living. My biggest goal on Instagram right now? To spend as little time on it as possible. I know, that probably sounds a bit backwards. I literally help people use social media to grow their businesses. But stick with me because this shift has been such a game changer for me, and I think it might be exactly what you've been needing to hear too. I'm going to share what happened when I deleted the apps over the summer, the lessons I didn't expect to learn, and how that shaped the way I'm approaching Instagram now that I'm back at work. So if you've ever felt like social media is taking up too much of your time or draining you more than it's helping you, then you are absolutely in the right place. And if you're new here, hi, I'm your host, Becci McAvoy. I am a multi-award-winning social media marketer, international speaker, and the dreamer behind Be Heard Socials and the Boss Your Socials Club. I created this podcast to help women like you simplify your life and grow a business on your terms without the overwhelm. So if you're ready for some no BS advice, practical tips and honest chats that make social media and business feel lighter and more doable, you are in exactly the right place. Right then, let's get started with this week's episode. So let me take you back to the summer, which honestly right now feels like a lifetime ago, as I'm sitting here recording this in mid-September and the rain is absolutely belting it down outside, but that's beside the point. Back at the end of July is what I want to talk about to start with. It was just after the kids broke up from school. I was about to take 5 weeks off to spend the summer holidays soaking up the memories with them and having a proper break from work. Now, I hadn't gone into summer particularly planning to delete social media from my life, but a few days in, I found myself getting really triggered by things I was seeing online. Not even necessarily business things, more personal bits and pieces. So I've taken the summer off for the last few years. It's one of the best goals I've ever set myself. But during that time, I think I've only ever deleted social media from my phone once, and that was last summer. And it was only for a few days to a week, and it was because there was lots of stuff going on in the news at that time that was really triggering me, and then I had it back on my phone. So the goal of taking the summer off and being with the kids has been wonderful, but I have always still had social media on my phone, and so naturally I've still sort of, I would share what I was up to on stories and stuff. But like I said, a few days into this summer holidays, I just found myself getting really triggered and just not feeling great about social media. So I thought, do you know what? This is the perfect opportunity, because rarely, if ever, do I actually feel able to completely delete the apps from my phone, given that I use them so much for work. And I love them, to be honest. I love using them for work. I love knowing how they help me with work and all that kind of stuff. So I can't just delete the apps from my phone. But I thought, do you know what? I am actually off work. I've told people that I'm off work. So this is my opportunity. I can actually just delete it and see how I get on with it. So it was a little impulsive, if I'm honest. I put together a post to say that I was actually going to delete the apps because, like I said, I've taken previous summers off, but I've never deleted the apps from my phone. So if people message me, I might still reply, or I'd show up on stories or things like that. So yeah, I put together this post. I communicated it with my audience to manage expectations, said that I was actually going to go for a complete digital detox. I wouldn't be about. And then I did it. I deleted the apps. It's actually quite scary of how big of a thing that seems to do. Like, they're literally just apps on your phone. But if we are all honest, we're addicted to them to a greater or a lesser degree. And I definitely realized this summer for me, it was a greater degree. And like, I don't even know what to say other than wow, like the difference it made was unreal. Looking back, I can see now that I was teetering on the edge of a low dose of burnout, and I was really emotionally drained after a tough few months personally, and stepping away was exactly what I needed. But even if it hadn't been, I think the impact still would have been huge. But like, I can see now that that's sort of what led to me doing it. Like I said, I was getting triggered by certain things, and it definitely was because of how I was feeling in myself. And so I think the impact was enormous for me. But like I said, even if I hadn't had any of that, I'm realizing now, and sort of with the things I'm trying to do now, that the impact would have still been huge. So like I said, for context, it wasn't the first time I'd done this. I'd done the same last summer when I was being triggered by some pretty huge things happening in the world. But I only did it for like no more than a week. And I actually found it quite hard last summer. Like I noticed myself sort of, this sounds really sad, but like actively missing it. I found it quite difficult not to have the apps on my phone. I didn't find that so much this summer, and I will go on to talk about that. But I do think that little mini detox last year, and there's been a couple of times where I've deleted it for like a day or a couple of days when I've been going somewhere, has helped me to find it a little bit easier this year. And I ended up having the apps off my phone for 5 weeks, which was amazing. So why am I sharing this with you today? Why am I doing a podcast episode about it? Well, I want to talk a little bit about what I learned from doing it, but also how I'm now going to approach social media now that I'm back at work and the apps are back on my phone. So let's start with what I found when I deleted the apps from my phone. So the first thing that I found, which was wonderful for me, was that I wasn't actually missing as much as I thought. As someone who gets massive FOMO, this was a big one for me. The fear of missing out was definitely there at first, and I think probably lingered like at various points, like the little voice that's like, what if something happens and you don't see it? Or what if you fall behind? Or what if you miss something huge? Or what if people forget about you? Like, it was like that. And in the first few days, I'll be honest, that was quite loud, and I did really feel like I was missing out. But here's the thing, when I did come back and check in, it wasn't life-changing stuff that I'd missed. It was the same kind of posts that are always there. Like the holidays that people are going on, the days out that they've had, what someone had for lunch, a new reel trend everyone was jumping on, or an update on people's thoughts on the news or things that had happened on Instagram. Like, it was nice to see, definitely, and in some cases helpful to see, but it was nothing that fundamentally changed my world by not seeing it in the moment. And the really important things still found their way to me. So, friends and family messaged me directly, and I caught up with people in real life. I had out of office messages on my DM. So a couple of friends had DM'd me on Instagram and got my out of office, and then sent me whatever they was going to send me on WhatsApp instead. And we chatted there. And it reminded me that the people who truly need me and the things that truly matter don't rely on me catching them in a 24-hour Instagram story window, or rely on me checking my DMs like regularly throughout the day. And that was a really freeing realization, because I know that, I've set this up for my business. So I have out of offices on and all that kind of stuff. And I have boundaries around that. And I think I am in a place where I'm okay with that, because people know that I'm not working. But the FOMO was around some of the personal stuff as well. And knowing that the sort of people that mattered and the things that mattered still got through to me was really, like I said, it was just a freeing realization. Because I think, and what I've reflected on, is that so often we treat social media like this fast moving train that we have to be on or we'll get left behind. But actually, most of it can wait. And if it really, really matters, it will come back around. And once I sort of saw that for myself and had that, like, because I was off for so much longer than I've ever been off social media before, the FOMO mostly went away. And that is, like, with complete honesty, instead of worrying about what I wasn't seeing, I could just be where I was, which was quite nice. And it just felt a lot lighter, especially when the reason that I was off was for the summer holidays. And that's intense with the kids around and everything. It all just felt a little bit lighter. Okay, so the second thing, I want to call these lessons, but it's what everybody goes on social media and says, isn't it? Like the lessons I learned from this in 5 years, 5 lessons I learned in 5 years of business, or, the lessons that I learned from taking the summer off. So I don't even know if I'd call them lessons, but these were kind of my realizations. And the second one for me was probably the biggest shift for me, actually, and probably the one that helped me the most. And it was how much quieter my brain felt. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed this. I'm sure you have, but sometimes I think it becomes so part of what we do that it just becomes a norm. But when you're scrolling, your mind never really switches off. It's like this constant stream of like pings of new notifications, of new posts, of, little dopamine hits when people like something you've shared or whatever, which is a real thing. I've done a course in psychology-led social media marketing, and that dopamine hit is a real thing. And before you know it, you have filled your head with hundreds of other people's voices. hundreds of other people's opinions, ideas, dramas, all layered on top of the things that you were already carrying around for yourself. Now, I am someone who has always had quite a busy brain. I'm someone who's constantly thinking about the next thing, whether it's work ideas, the kids, what's for tea, the mental to-do list that never ever ends. So if I'm throwing social media on top of that, it just becomes noise and real noisy noise. So when the apps were gone, that noise stopped. Like lots of the other stuff was still there, or, my busy brain was still there, but that noise stopped and it was just so much quieter. And obviously it wasn't silent. I still had my own thoughts racing around, like I said, but it was my thoughts, not everyone else's. I had more space in my head to process how I was feeling, more space to let ideas form instead of them being drowned out by what I'd just seen on someone else's feed. And that space was gold. It gave me clarity I don't think I even realised I'd been missing. Like I could sit in the garden with a drink when it was sunny and not belting down with rain and just think if I wanted to, or not think actually, and just be. And again, that sounds very Insta-worthy, but if you've got a busy brain like me, you'll know how rare that is. And for me, that was life-changing because it reminded me that my brain deserves quiet. It deserves rest. And if I want to show up as my best self for me, for my kids, for my business, then I can't keep stuffing it with noise 24/7. And I am in control of limiting some of the unnecessary noise. So that was just enormous for me. And like I said, you hear it from people all the time. It's all the advice that's out there, but actually experiencing it was wonderful. So the other thing I learned or realized, however you want to phrase it, was how much time I got back. Now, again, this is one that you'll hear all the time. It's the same as like, if you want more time, stop watching telly or stop scrolling social media. But it wasn't just like scraps of 5 minutes here and there. It was proper big chunks of time. And honestly, I know, again, we're told this all the time, but until I did it, I hadn't realised, I don't think, how distracted I'd been before. It was like this constant low-level hum in the background had gone. Because I guess, like when your social media is there and you're checking it out of habit, you're always half thinking about checking your phone, or I definitely am, wondering what I'm missing. And I just kind of accepted that as normal because social media has been in our lives for a long time. But without the apps on my phone, like I said, the noise went away, like I was saying earlier, and it made me realise that I did have more control than I thought. I didn't have to feel on edge or distracted all the time or feeling like I'm trying to do several different things at once all the time. And I guess that was just a bit revolutionary, which again sounds a little bit sad and it sounds a little bit obvious, but experiencing it was wonderful for me. The other thing that I noticed is that the itch went away. So I wasn't sure if I'd be able, like how long I'd be able to do it for. And at the start, I definitely had that itch, like when you just automatically pick up your phone without even realizing you're doing it. That was, and to an extent is, like 100% me. Like I'd unlock it, stare at the screen, and then remember, like, oh yeah, the apps aren't even there anymore. It was such a habit. I guess it's muscle memory. Like honestly, to start with, it's ridiculous. But I'd pick up my phone and unlock it out of habit and wonder what I was even meant to do with my phone without the social media apps on it. And how scary is that? Like never have I been more sure that I was addicted to my phone or social media. But after a while, because there was nothing to scroll, the habit just kind of broke, I guess, because again, it's that muscle memory, isn't it? I did it less and less until eventually I didn't even reach for my phone at all. And often I'd need my phone to go and message somebody or something, and I didn't even know where it was, whereas normally it was attached to my hand. And again, it was just very, very freeing. Now, I will be completely honest, in the first few days, and I laughed with my husband about this, I spent an absolute fortune on online shopping. And I think it's because I literally didn't know what to do with my phone when it didn't have the apps on it, but gradually that went away as well. So yeah, it was just very freeing. And it was nice to know that the itch does go away and you can retrain your muscle memory for it, to break bad habits, I guess. And the final sort of lesson realization, I guess, was that social media became more intentional. So there was a couple of times I needed to reinstall the apps and log back in. Mostly that was because there some people I can only really get hold of through Instagram. And I didn't really realize that beforehand because I could just always message them. So I logged in to send them the message. One of them was the wonderful Jenny Hudson, who has an amazing skincare business, and I get my skincare through her. I always message her through Instagram, and I needed some new moisturizer. So that's the kind of example of what it is. But I basically log back in, send the message I needed to send, and then log straight back out again. And that kind of reinforced the point I said about getting the time back, because I think I had to do it about 3 or 4 times across the 5 weeks for different messages. And each time, one of them was for my nails as well. So they were all with amazing small businesses. The amazing Alicia Nails by Alicia Lauren, who does my nails. I had to log in to message her as well. But so the first time I did it, I can't remember who that was to, but I logged in, got distracted by certain things, and I'd fallen down a rabbit hole of scrolling again. I was like, oh my God, this is literally what I'm trying to stop. So it shows how quickly you can fall back into that. But I sort of had to be really strict with myself the other couple of times I had to log back in, to log in, send the message, and then log back out again. And like I said, it just made it much more intentional. And I guess that was kind of the turning point for me, because for the first time in ages, or even forever, I was using Instagram for a reason and not just out of habit or boredom. Now, obviously I was using Instagram for a reason before that with my business, but I would fall down that rabbit hole. So I'd spend more time on it than I needed to. And like I said, this stopped me from using it just out of habit or boredom. It slowly stopped me from falling into the scroll. I wasn't posting stories just because I felt like I should, or felt like I wanted to share something because, other people are sharing it, and then I see something and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to share it. I went in, I did what I needed to do, and got back to my day. So yeah, I guess to wrap all that up, I don't want this to come across as me preaching. You know that feeling when someone's just started eating really healthy or exercising, and I've probably been this person in the past, and they're suddenly telling you how amazing it is and how easy life feels now. I don't want to be that person. That's not what this episode is about. I'm just sharing this because I think some of us almost need permission to step back and try it. And actually, when I put the post out, when I logged back in after the summer, I'd been tagged in a couple of posts of other people that said I'd inspired them to do the same. And that was so lovely because they'd felt like they couldn't. They'd seen mine. And I guess I don't know whether it came with more power coming from a social media marketer, but it gave them permission to do it. And so I wanted to do this podcast episode because I think sometimes we need that permission slip to step back and do it for ourselves, especially in business. It can feel like there are so many shoulds, like we should always be on, we should always be showing up. And if we don't, well, then clearly our business is doomed forever. But it's just not true. Deleting the apps was honestly, this is going to sound grand, but I'm going to go with it, life-changing for me. And I really didn't expect it to be. I just thought I could cut out some of the noise for a little bit that was triggering me. And even though I love social media, I would have kept them off for longer if it wasn't for coming back to work in September. And that for me was a really big wake-up call. It made me realise that when I did come back in September, I couldn't just dive straight back into the way that I'd been using social media before. I needed to rethink how I was using it, not as something that runs my life and I'm addicted to, but as something that supports my business and to an extent my life, because I use social media socially and personally too. But yeah, not something that runs my life and my business, but as something that supports my life and my business. And like I said, that's what led me to doing this podcast, and also to setting myself this new goal, which is to spend as little time on Instagram as possible. However, this is the important bit, while still getting the results I want. So yeah, to spend as little time on Instagram as possible while still getting the results I want. Now, I want to be really clear here, because I'm not saying I don't like social media and I just want to be off it as much as I can. I love Instagram and I love social media in general, actually. I don't think I'll ever be one of those people who rants about how much they hate it, but have to use it anyway, which is probably a good job, or I might need to rethink my whole business. But jokes aside, social media genuinely is amazing for connection. It's amazing for community, for growth. I've seen that firsthand. I've benefited from that firsthand, both in my business and in the businesses that I've supported. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a tool, and a tool can't be something that takes over every spare minute of mine or your life. I and you are one person, and I want for myself and for you, actually. I want more for myself and for you than being glued to my phone 24/7. And honestly, that has always been part of my why. It's why I set up Bossy Socials Club, and it's why I run it the way I do. My advice, I think, has always been different to what you often hear from most social media experts, because I've always been big on boundaries. I've always believed that your approach has to work for you, that there's not one size fits all. And, I'm a big believer that the word should be banned. Should be banned. That's contradicted myself. But the word should isn't a helpful way to give advice to people. It has to work for you, for your life, and for your business. Otherwise, what's the point? But this summer, I've always believed that, but this summer really drove that home for me. It made me realize that I could go even harder on that for myself, yes, but also for the women that I support in their businesses as well. And I know it's needed, because I keep seeing more and more people saying they're done with Instagram altogether. They're tired, they're overwhelmed, they're drained, and they just don't see the value anymore. I see a lot of people saying it about Instagram, and actually just generally across social media. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I feel like the advice that's out there is either, here's how you can love social media and do all of the things, or it's like, oh, social media is a devil and here's how not to use it at all. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to quit Instagram or any other platform completely, but you also don't have to spend hours glued to your phone. There is a middle ground, and that's a bit that I want to help you find. So I've already started making changes myself. I've been back at work about a couple of weeks now. So some simple things like making the apps harder to access, cutting down how often I post each week, and only logging into my business account during work hours. So if I want to scroll in the evening, I'll use my personal account instead, which was interesting over the summer because I hadn't logged into that since 2019. So it was weird coming back into that, but it was lovely because the algorithm was so different over there. And I was just seeing lots of stuff about, now some of you might hate this, but Love Island, which I loved, Liverpool Football Club, food recipes, all things like that. So it was a really nice way to actually, I was using social media in the evening in a more enjoyable way and not coming across business stuff. So they're tiny tweaks. They're just some of the things that I've done, but they've already made a really big difference. Now, the other thing I have done is put something together to help you take action on this as well. So at the start of October, the beginning of next week when this episode comes out, I'm going to be running a free 5-day challenge called How to Spend Less Time on Instagram and Still Get the Results You Want. And that's the key part. It's not just about spending less time on it. That bit actually is quite easy if you think about it. You could just log out today and not go on it and you'd be spending less time on it. But the real goal is spending less time on it and still getting the results you want, still getting the benefits out of social media, of which there are many for your business. That's the bit that makes all the difference. So here's what that challenge is going to look like. Each day you will get a short video from me with one simple action step, nothing long, nothing complicated. You will have support and accountability inside a private space just for challenge members, so you don't have to feel like you're doing it all on your own. And we will also have some live sessions together, one where we'll batch your content, so some co-working like I do inside the Boss Your Socials Club, but it will just be part of this challenge and for free, and one where we will celebrate your progress. And I have deliberately designed this challenge to come with no overwhelm, no stress, just small manageable steps that slot into your life, even if things are hectic. The tasks are quick and easy, but they'll still make a big impact, not just on your Instagram results, but on your mental load too. So by the end of the 5-day challenge, you will feel lighter, clearer, and much more in control of your Instagram without it eating up all your time. So if that sounds like what you need right now, come and join me. I will put the link in the show notes, and I would honestly love to see your name pop up inside the challenge. Like I said, it's completely free. You just have to sign up via the link in the show notes, and then you'll be sent all the details for next steps and things like that. So that's where I'm at with all of this. I hope it has been useful for you. Spending less time on social media has genuinely given me space, calm, and presence that I didn't even realize I was missing. And it reminded me that my business can grow without me being glued to my phone, even as a social media marketer. So if you have been feeling that same heaviness or that constant pull to check Instagram, even when you don't really want to, or you're doing it because you feel like you have to or should do, I hope this episode has given you permission to step back a little, to breathe, and to remember that you get to decide how you use social media. It doesn't get to decide for you. And if you'd like a bit of guidance and support while you figure out what that looks like for you, then like I said, come and join me for the free 5-day challenge. It's going to be such a nice chance to simplify things together, take small but powerful steps, and remind ourselves that social media can work for us, not run our lives. And you'll get to do it alongside all the other amazing women that are joining the challenge, which, surrounding yourself with women who have the same goal as you and want to cheer you on doing it is like the best thing in the world. So yeah, the link is in the show notes. Please come and join us. Thank you so much for listening today. I am always grateful for your time, and I hope you are walking away from this episode feeling a little bit lighter. I'll see you inside the challenge or right back here on Show Up and Be Heard in the next episode. Big thank you from me again for listening to Show Up and Be Heard, but please don't go without telling me your name. I genuinely love meeting new people and making new connections. If you don't already, I would love it if you would come find me on Instagram, LinkedIn or Facebook and drop me a message to say hello and let me know what you thought of the episode. The link to all my socials are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode or found it useful, then I would really appreciate if you could take just a few minutes to give it a review on whatever platform you are listening on, because everyone I get really does make me do a little squeal and a big happy dance. Finally, more than anything else, please always remember, realising that you're not actually meant to do this stuff alone is the first step to making it easier. So I'll see you next time.